Hello, everybody, and welcome to another discussion in DataBank's leadership series. Today's topic is a really good one. I'm excited about it. It's why psychological safety is the cornerstone of high-performing teams. And you see our subject matter experts here. They are Paul Myott, Vice President of Organizational Effectiveness and Internal Communications, Kelley Edwards, Vice President of Data Center Operations, and Calli Schlientz, who is our Director of Compliance. Hi, folks.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
Judith.
Hey, thanks for being here today. I kind of feel like the term psychological safety has just recently reached the corporate culture lexicon. And I think there might be some misunderstanding of what it is and what it isn't. So let's dive in. Start with you, Paul. I'm going to give you a two-part question. First, how do you define psychological safety? And the second part of that is, why is it especially important in high pressure technical work environments like data centers?
Yeah, well, this is actually one of the topics that's near and dear to my heart. I love this one. Psychological safety is actually something that spans both our professional and our personal lives, right? Just a concept where, you know, when we exist in an environment where we feel safe to take risks, we voice concerns, we share ideas without any fear of embarrassment or some kind of retribution, right? That's a psychologically safe environment, right? So it's really the climate or the place where you can feel safe to fully be yourself and express yourself, which in turn brings out the creativity in all of us, right? So from a professional perspective, teams that have high degrees of psychological safety, just it's been found, empirically that they perform better. They produce better results because they're free to create the things that they're best at creating, right? Um, so the second part of your question, though, what are some of the barriers to psychological safety on teams, is actually the people on the teams, right? Most notably, it's still, we still operate, I think, in a culture in most work environments where we look to the leadership team, right, to give us direction or to pave the way for us, remove barriers, whatever it is, right? So it really starts with leadership. It starts with whoever is really taking care of that group or team, whether it's a leader, team lead, a project manager, whatever it is, right? They have the onus and the magic and the capability to enable that team to free themselves up by bringing down the barriers, like I mentioned earlier, like embarrassment of being wrong, or maybe presenting something that doesn't sound right or doesn't have all the logic behind it, right? Once that leader or the person who's kind of guiding the group can bring those barriers down, people feel a lot more comfortable and free to contribute, to create, to make to make that magic happen, right? That the group is capable of this. So it's super important for teams.
Got it. Kelly, talk to us about what does that look like when you put it into action? So um, you're working in a mission critical environment, right? In data center operations, or your team is. What does that look like to you?
So I think psychological safety is really just boils down to trust and being able to speak freely. So in an operational environment, things are always going to go wrong. I mean, it's operations, and that's why we're there. So when things go wrong, it's not about pointing the finger. It's about getting to the root of the issue. What process or what issue happened that occurred that you can ask somebody the question, they can actually give you the truth as to what happened and not feel like it's a negative repercussion, addressing the issue and not the person. But I also think psychological safety is bilateral. So it's one thing to ask somebody and they have psychological safety with their leadership to speak the truth, but it goes both ways, right? Giving your leader feedback on what they want to improve, feeling like that they're heard. It goes both ways. And I 100% agree with Paul. It's about setting the tone. And that does start at top at setting the culture. That's one of the reasons why I like DataBank is the culture is such that ideas come from everywhere. The people that are closest to the problem, 9 times out of 10, have a solution. And so it's empowering them in that psychological safety to say, hey, I think this is the direction that we should go. And this is why.
It's kind of like the definition of communication itself. It has to be two-way
Exactly.
or it doesn't work. Yeah, okay. Got it. So let's take a different tack and talk about the compliance aspect of it. So Calli, how does psychological safety affect compliance outcomes? And I'm referring to when employees need to report potential violations or if there are any gray area issues.
Yeah, so it helps clarify those gray areas, right? So you mentioned having the gray areas. So having psychological safety allows for this open communication that we were just talking about in asking the questions, understanding the why. Why do we do the things that we do and feeling comfortable in pushing against that why? Um, Not just saying, well, we're going to do that because we are told we have to do that. We're not just going to toe that line, but pushing back and understanding the why behind it and implementing the controls that our compliance frameworks require us to implement in the best possible way, not just for the meeting of those controls, but also for the people and the business that we're operating. So if we understand why we're implementing those, we open up this door for people to answer those questions. When our customers come to us and say, why can't I do this? Or can I do this? We can answer those questions in a little bit better of a way. And maybe we can allow for certain things that we're being approached with because we understand the overarching why, because we've had these conversations. So it helps employees feel comfortable in that reporting of issues. It helps them to feel comfortable in asking those questions. We joke a little bit in our team about being this like one-stop shop for all of the questions in our compliance department. And it's because we've set up this place where it's okay to bring all of those questions to our compliance team. If I don't know the answer, we're going to help you find the answer. And that might not be my team's responsibility, but it might be that we know all of the different areas of DataBank or of whatever company you're at and can navigate those conversations in a way that creates open communication. And so having that ability keeps people from, oh, I don't want to say anything because it might be a compliance violation or it might get
Mhm.
us in trouble. No, they're willing to come and ask the question because they think, hey, we might find a way to do this together. Or we might find a way that works for us and our customer, or that works for us and, this other department over here that we're working with.
I never really thought about that before, Calli, because your team is you're educators. I mean, you're almost the
Mhm.
psychological safety team, right?
We certainly try.
All right. Paul, back to you. So you already talked earlier about some of the common barriers. Let's go over to your suggestion on practical strategies or behaviors that leaders can adopt to create that culture where team members feel safe to speak up and contribute.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's two things I'll mention right off the bat. The first one, and it's pretty much a leadership principle, right? It's about modeling it. One of the ways in which you can start to really break down the barriers with your team is for you to model that psychological safety and be vulnerable with the team, right? Show your team your weak spots or admit to areas where you could have done better, right? Another tactic, which is really, really powerful, is to do postmortems. Make sure that if something goes wrong, it's more about the learning and getting better than it is about the chastising them or having anybody feel badly for what they did, right? So if you don't follow up with them and do the learning portion, and then maybe chime in and admit when something went wrong and that was similar that happened to the leader, right? That just brings the temperature way down. Another another way in which leaders can do this is on team calls, right? start every call by asking the team, or every meeting where you have the team together, ask them, hey, what is it that you know or you see that I don't know that I need to know, right? And you roll through a couple of those, and they see that the leader is not reacting in a negative way. That's going to start to, again, set that tone to say, ah, it's okay. I can say there's an area that maybe I'm responsible for. There's an area that is not up to snuff. We need to fix it, or something needs to be done about it, or I messed up, Okay, thank you for, letting me know. What are we going to do about it, right? Moving quickly to the what do you suggest, or what are we going to do about it, can help to alleviate that fear of, uh-oh, here it comes. I just let the cat out of the bag. I hope this doesn't go poorly. So those are some of the ways in which I've found and worked with leaders to really bring down the barriers and create that high psychological safety. But I will admit, it's a practice. It's like building a muscle,
Yeah.
right? You can't just do it and expect all of a sudden everybody's going to bring their problems to you or admit their faults or whatever, right? You got to model it and you got to practice it.
I love that question. I remember reading something a while ago, but it was in the context of parenting, where you'd ask your children, what what should you tell me that you don't want me to know? And just kind of open that up. I hope I got that right. All right, Calli, let's go back to you. What are the cultural practices that help bridge this gap? So we've got fear of noncompliance, and we have proactive, open reporting within teams. What cultural practices bridge that gap?
So to me, it's relationship building. To me, it's people understanding what your true intentions are, that you're not on a witch hunt, that you're looking to do right by the customers and by the business, and having them be part of the solution, not the problem. If people have buy into a solution, if they believe that they have been heard, and there's an example of someone that has an idea and it's been taken all the way to the top and been implemented, then that's them being part of the solution. So I think from a psychological safety standpoint, making sure that people are heard, making sure that you build those relationships so that there's a trust factor, so that when you do go in a one-on-one or even a group setting, as Paul said, I sort of prefer in a one-on-one scenario, because I think people are more open one-on-one versus in a large group team setting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you establish that rapport and you're authentic and you can just speak the truth, one-on-one, I think we all have our professional selves in more of a large setting. And then you get one-on-one and you ask somebody, hey, what's really going on? Because I care and I want to know, and no backlash, or, we want to improve the business, and, you will be heard, and, saying all the right things. But, and I agree that it happens over time. And to me, that when you have people that are really smart, and we hire really smart people, we all do. What company doesn't? So if you hire really smart people, guess what? 9 times out of 10, they have the answer. And so it's a matter of them feeling free to give the answer and feel like everything is just not top down. And to me, that's part of psychological safety, that people feel heard, empowering them so that they feel heard, and that something happens with it. Even if nothing happens with it, circling back to say, hey, it went here, but it stopped, and this is why. So they know that just didn't stop for no reason. So I think it's about them knowing that they are empowered, that they're heard, that they are part of the solution, and that they are a key person in the company and they are valued. When a person knows they're valued every day and they get up and they want to come to work because they know they're going to make a difference, then that's very powerful.
Yeah.
Kelley, I just want to add to that. I love where you're going with that, because to me, what you're saying is that all of those behaviors show that you care, right?
Yeah.
When you genuinely care about the people on your teams, they know it, right? And that's where it sets the stage. I mean, I think a lot of times we get in these command and control type relationships on teams, and when you're a leader or you're a follower or you're employee, whatever, and you might feel like they're concerned with your job and how you do your job, but you don't necessarily feel like they care about me as a person, where my career is going, et cetera, right? It takes a holistic approach, right, to really create psychological safety. And a lot of what Kelley said, in my mind, has to do with just being a good person and caring.
Yeah, I think the human factor. I think a lot of times,
Yeah, the human factor.
we are absolutely data driven, right? And what companies shouldn't be. But there's also just the human factor of just understanding and meeting somebody where they're at,
Yeah.
and just leading in that way with a little bit of empathy and understanding. And so I say that managing is like, having children, not that I have any, having children, and each child must be parented differently, right? And so, in leadership as well, with that psychological safety and establishing it with each individual on your team or in a larger organization, it's a trickle down effect.
Calli, I'm going to toss the same question over to you. Talk about that, bridging that gap between the fear and the openness.
Yeah, I think it comes from building this culture of normalization around these conversations, right? So
Yeah,
it's not it's having the conversations, but it's like you were talking about, it's modeling the behavior.
right.
So it's having in team conversations, this communication that I make mistakes too. I tell my team all the time, I've sat in each one of your positions. I didn't start my journey as a director of compliance. I started my journey as a compliance engineer. I've worked my way through those positions. I didn't come from this world. I came from a totally different environment in higher education. I had to learn it too. And so it's okay to make the mistakes. It's okay to have the conversations. It's okay to ask the questions. But in asking those questions and making those mistakes, we learn to fail forward. We learn to learn from those things, right? One of the things that I teach in training a new employee every time I do training is there are very few things particularly in my department, and it's a bit different for Kelly's department, but particularly in my department, there are very few things that we can't come back from if you make a mistake, right? In Kelly's department, it's a little harder because if they hit an EPO switch, we have a little bit different of a challenge, right? Like we've now taken customers down. But in my world, we can make mistakes and they're not detrimental.
Yeah,
Nobody's life is at risk. And with the right training to make the right judgment calls, we can learn to have those open conversations. So we're not training just to follow the procedure and follow the rules. We're also training people to make the right judgment calls. And so having a culture where compliance is built into those training processes at every level, it kind of builds that I'm safe in making the decision. I don't need to go ask compliance. I don't need to go ask my boss if I can make this decision because I've been taught, I've been trained, I've learned the right way to do this, and I know the best judgment call to make in this moment. I'm empowered to make that decision, and I know that I'll have the support of my leadership when I do make that decision. And if it's
yeah.
wrong, they're going to coach me on how to make it better next time.
And who wouldn't want to be on a team like that, right?
Yeah.
So bringing it home, I have one last question, and I was going to ask it to one of you, but now I think I need to ask it to all of you. So, yeah, one by one, give me your top advice to give to other leaders who are looking to embed psychological safety into their own team culture.
I'll go first.
Anybody go first? Yeah.
Mine would be modeling vulnerability and actively soliciting input. Start by doing those two things.
Good. Who's next?
I'll go next. I would agree with Paul 100%, but I would say sometimes it's not in a large setting. It can be one-on-one and being a little bit more authentic and building the trust. And it'll happen over time. It's not overnight, where you can get maybe some of the key people to influence others to be more psychological safety. So your team and the makeup of your team. And if you're a seasoned leader, you know who the influencers are. Getting those people to open up, and then other people see that they've opened up and there's no negative repercussions, then they'll tend to follow suit. So being a little bit strategic about it.
Great. Calli.
And mine kind of tacks on to Kelly's actually. It's about having trust is built when leadership is showing that doing the next right thing, whatever that next right thing is better than staying silent. So if we just constantly strive towards the next right decision, that's always the best choice.
Love it. Great discussion, guys. If anybody here is listening today and you like this kind of discussion, we have other videos and blogs in our leadership series. Just go to databank.com, look in the resources section, search for leadership, and you'll find everything. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.